and now New York attending the COP28 interview, the member of the European Agency, Andrew Kerr. When we bring it now to you, let's take a look.
So we have the pleasure now to have with us Mr. Andrew Kerr. He is an observer and representative of European Innovation Agency. Pleasure, sir, to have you on the Egyptian TV and LAN TV International. And let me ask you about your participation in this COP28.
So we are here because we are working with different UN agencies and with many private sector players to try and mobilize and catalyze finance and innovation into the work that is done on climate adaptation. So that's both working obviously in Europe, but also increasingly in Africa, in Latin America, to support the innovation ecosystems and to support new ideas and new approaches that will help communities, cities, regions to essentially adapt, to build resilience against climate impacts.
Yeah. How and by which means we can get resilient development and resilient people even?
So there is no one simple solution, but we are working with, we know that we need to support the development of these innovation ecosystems, so bringing people together. We know we need to bring private money in to support and leverage the public money that is available, and we need to make sure that developed countries are also providing funding to support this, so that we're building public and private money to support these innovation ecosystems. So,
thanks a lot for your interview.
Thank you very much for your time.
Welcome back, ladies and gentlemen. We're now delighted to be joined over the telephone by Dr. Abdel Fattah Badri, professor in Helwan University. Very good afternoon to you, Dr. Abdel Fattah.
Hello, good evening.
Good evening to you, Doctor. Thank you very much for joining us.
Thank you for having me.
Thank you very much, Doctor. Let me start by asking you, how do you see President Abdel Fattah el-Sisi's speech before the COP28? The President spoke about the need for global cooperation to achieve climate action goals.
Yes, of course, I see it as an excellent speech. Mm-hmm. We should not forget that Egypt was the organizer of the COP27. Yes. So when the President talked today, he has experience of the previous conference, and he has a lot of information through Egypt's organization of the previous conference. Yes. In addition, the topics he mentioned in his speech was up to date, and he calling for international cooperation is essential to achieving the targets of the COP conferences. These conferences, which are actually organized each year by the United Nations, is aimed at lowering the emissions in order to reduce the climate change. And the climate change does not occur in a single country, yes, but occurs all over the world. And this needs the get together of all nations to combat the causes of the climate change.
Absolutely. Doctor, now we were seeing, of course, Egypt presented a group of recommendations and initiatives at the COP27, which was held in the Egyptian Red Sea resort city of Sharm el-Sheikh last year, to confront issues related to climate change. What are some of the most important developments in those initiatives?
Fortunately, I was participating in the COP27 in Sharm el-Sheikh, representing the Helwan University, mm-hmm, and this year I will be going again to represent Egypt and the Helwan University in the COP28. Mm. So many of the issues raised in the previous conference will be discussed again, but there is some new ideas and some new efforts to be done and new negotiations to take place in order to update the get together and the efforts to combat climate change. One of the topics I will be talking about is food security, how the food security will be affected by climate change.
Yes.
And how can we cope with this? How can we breed new crops that can produce sufficient food for the human population, for the increasing human population under the climate change? And what type of food would be produced? And what is the impact of the food prices on the human population in the future? And there are some other, what we could marginal crops or marginal plants. How can we use these marginal plants to improve food security for the human population?
Right, absolutely. And finally, Dr. Abdel Fattah, what do you see are some of the most important climate challenges now facing, the over 200 leaders and delegates and people responsible for, putting into effect laws related to climate change? What do you see are some of the
I think we need more
challenges?
cooperation from the industrialized countries who actually cause climate change, and to get them more committed to climate change. Climate change can be actually controlled by adaptation or mitigation. Adaptation is try to avoid the impact of climate change, and mitigation is to repair the effects of the climate change. For mitigation, of course, for these cost money, and the people who actually release most emissions, which cause climate change, should pay the price for repair. So the United States and the Western countries, in addition to China, which are the great producers of the emissions causing climate change, should be more responsible for the mitigation and the adaptation, which are the strategies and policies for repairing the climate change in the future.
I'd like to thank you very, very much, Dr. Abdel Fattah, Professor of Faculty of Science from Helwan University. Thank you very much, sir, for your time and your insight. And I'll have to leave it there. And we continue with more news. The National Elections Authority said in a Saturday press conference that all notices from embassies around the world have been answered. Ahmed Bandari, head director of the Executive Office of the National Election Authority, said voters can now vote with a photocopy of their national ID, with ambassadors verifying the identity of the voter. Presidential elections are to continue in over 103 polling stations around the world, whilst one polling station, which is New Zealand, will now close by today. Of course, this would be their third day. Now, Bandari held a video conference call with a number of Egyptian ambassadors and consulates abroad to follow up on the progress of the electoral process for Egyptians, and ambassadors confirmed that there have been no problems or obstacles faced in managing the National Elections Authority's work. And they also formed a central operations room equipped with live television broadcasting technology to follow up on the Egyptians who are broadcasting their votes in the electoral centers inside headquarters of diplomatic missions, including the embassies and consulates from all around the world. And in related news, many Egyptians all around the world living abroad headed to the polling stations at their respective embassies for the first, sometimes second day of voting for the Egyptian expats in the 2024 presidential elections. 137 embassies and consulates across 121 countries will receive voters from 9 a.m. to 9 p.m. from December 1st till December the 3rd. We have more details in this report.
Many Egyptians living abroad headed to polling stations at their respective embassies for the first day of voting for Egyptians expats in the 2024 presidential election. A total of 106 polling stations opened worldwide on Friday, according to Ahmed Bandari, the executive director of the National Elections Authority. According to the NEA, 137 embassies and consulates across 121 countries will receive voters from 9 a.m. to 9 p.m. on December 1st to 3rd. In an atmosphere of enthusiasm, Egyptians in Saudi Arabia went to the Embassy of Egypt in Riyadh to cast their ballots. Saudi Arabia hosts the largest Egyptian population abroad, estimated at 3 million, with 2 available polling stations in Riyadh and Jeddah. Many Egyptians also cast votes at the Embassy of Egypt in Abu Dhabi. The Ministry of Immigration's Facebook page also shared photos of hundreds of Egyptian expats casting votes in various European and Arab countries. According to data documented by the Dialogue Forum for Development and Human Rights, the number of voters abroad in 2012 presidential elections was around 314,000. It increased slightly in 2014 to over 318,000 before it declined in the 2018 elections to just 157,000 votes. The candidates running for the presidency include incumbent President Abdel Fattah el-Sisi, who is running for a third term in office and whose electoral symbol is the star; Fareed Zahran, the leftist opposition Social Democratic Party candidate with the sun as his electoral symbol; Abdessamad Yamema, candidate of the Wafd Party, who has chosen the palm tree as his symbol; and Hazem Omar, the Republican People's Party candidate, with the ladder as his symbol.
And for our final news item, in a statement released by the Ministry of Foreign Affairs, Egypt expressed its profound condemnation for the collapse of the ceasefire and resumption of intense airstrikes and Israeli military operations against people in the Gaza Strip. We have more details in this report.
In a statement released by the Ministry of Foreign Affairs, Egypt expressed profound condemnation for the collapse of the ceasefire and the resumption of intense airstrikes and Israeli military operations against the Gaza Strip. The renewed hostilities have resulted in further casualties among Palestinian civilians, marking a grave setback and a disregard by the Israeli side for all efforts made in recent days to extend the ceasefire aimed at sparing the lives of innocent Palestinians and securing the delivery of more urgent humanitarian aid to the region. Egypt has warned against the dangerous expansion of Israeli military operations in southern Gaza. It strongly denounced Israel's encroachment of Palestinians beyond the borders of Gaza, considering it a blatant violation of commitments as the occupying force and all provisions of international humanitarian law, especially the Fourth Geneva Convention of 1949. Egypt repeated its firm rejection of the forced placement of Palestinians beyond their land and a red line that will not be allowed to be crossed. The country renewed its call to influential international parties, relevant UN agencies, with the Security Council at the forefront to fulfill their responsibilities in ensuring the protection of Palestinian civilians in Gaza. Egypt emphasized the importance of halting attempts and plans to force them to leave their homeland, underscoring the need for the effective implementation of the resolutions issued by the Security Council and the General Assembly in this regard.
With this final news item, we wrap up our coverage for the hour. You're in the company of myself, Angie Meher, but do stay tuned for the hour's top stories and top of the hour. Thank you for joining us.
Go vote. Together we can rise to any challenge.